All right, welcome to week 7. This week we've got the storage lab coming up, and chapter 14 and 16 is what we've got. I did extend the exam. A couple people had issues with that, so I extended that out, but most of you have completed the exam. So week 7, we're going to cover chapter 14 and 16. Make sure you do the quizzes. And you got the discussion questions, but then we also have a storage lab and the managing files lab. Where's that? Why is that not showing up? Okay, so managing files, I moved that. Okay. So we got 2 labs this week, I guess. No, this has to be 20th. Okay. Okay, so there we go. Managing users. I'm sorry here. So that should, I guess that's right. I'm sorry. So that was correct on the 12th. All right, so that was fine. It's storage lab. This is just in the wrong folder. So, all right, let me look at week 6. Well, the good news is I'm not going to take off late for these anyway. This is the summer class. It's moving too fast. And so lab managing users, right? That's what I thought. Okay. So last week was the managing users. So this actually, let me see here. So this is the manage users research, right? I moved that. I don't know why that didn't move. And then the manage users was this week. And then the lab manage files. I'm going to move it to the storage. That they can work. You can do those together because they're fine. Or if I can move, yeah. NTFS shares and permissions. And then that's the project imaging. So I'm going to move this to August 2nd. Oh, come on. All right, so that moved that. And we can move this to the 26th. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so So I got the managing files this week, the storage lab next week, and then research at NTFS. Okay, all right. So we got the managing files this week, which means we do have this. Storage lab goes to the next week. Week 8. All right. So that just means we got the lab managing files this week. All right. So much like the users, managing users, it's just creating a text document with the lines of code. You're going to create 3 files and 2 directories. The file names are file1.txt, file2.txt, and file3.log. You'll create 2 directories, directory 1, directory 2. You'll copy all the 3 files to both directories, rename file 2 in directory 2 to my renamed file.log, and then delete file 3.log from directory 1, and then move the second file from directory 1 to directory 2. So you should end up with only 1 file in directory 1, file1.txt, and then directory 2 should have 4 files, file1.txt, file2.txt, file3.log, and my renamed file.log. And it should just automatically perform all these steps. All right, so you just want a list of code or commands that you would do at the command line that would do all of these and put them in the Word document. And then you want one for Windows and one for Linux. Are there any questions on that? Okay. So it shouldn't be too hard. I mean, just, you're creating 3 files and naming directories. So one thing that I will, I guess, show that it's probably not as known, but if you go to a command prompt, so if you do echo this and then the greater than symbol file.txt, it will create, I'll do a directory now, and there will be a file.txt. So that created a file, and if I, let's see here, more, right, so more txt, right? So it's a file that says this in it. So if I actually go to this PC, C users, spice, there's the file right here, and it just says the word this. Because I did is I went and echoed this to file, I did file 1, but now I'll do file 2, right? So let me pull this up while I do this. So, okay, and so there's file, oh, I did file.txt. Let's do file 1. So file 1, and so now there's file 1. So echoing some statement and then a greater than sign, it redirects the output of this command to, because if I just do echo this, it'll just echo this. But the greater than sign redirects the output of a command. And if you give it a file name, let's do this. Let me do echo that and do file.text. It will overwrite. Oops. It'll overwrite the file. So now if I go into file, it says that instead of this. It overwrote. If I wanted to add to it, I would add another greater than sign, and then that and more, right? So I'm going to add that to the file, and so it's that and more, right? So you can redirect the output. One greater than symbol will overwrite or create a file. Two greater than symbols together will append. It will update, it'll add to a file. So this is how you can write log files and that through the command line and through scripts and things like that. It's one way that we do this. So knowing that the greater than symbol is a way. So this is a way to create the files. So when it says to create 3 files from the command line, this is one way. And this redirect works the same on Windows and Linux. So this works for Linux and Windows to create files. So that's one thing that you may not know and not be able to find easily for this assignment. So just wanted to let you know the rest of it, creating directories, copying files, renaming files, all that you should be able to research and find how to do that very easily from the command line for both Windows and Linux. But creating the files, that one might not be easy to know or find. So let's see here. And all right, so that's pretty much it. That'll be due on Sunday. This is fairly simple, straightforward. Now that I've shown you how to create a file, this should be fairly easy. Do you have any questions on this or any other assignment or any other issues?
Yeah, I did the I don't remember which one was the last one I turned in, but I did the lab of managing users,
Right.
where you had to write about it. Is that the same thing as the lab of managing files, or is that a new one?
Right. The managing files is different, right? So that's like I just said, creating files, moving files, renaming files. Where the users was creating users, creating groups, right? So they are two different. So this one's due Sunday next week, right? So that's what we're working on this week. Users was last week.
Okay, it says so managing users, that was a lab or was that a writing assignment for last week?
Um, it it was the assignment. So all right, so that there was 2, right? So there was a writing assignment, and that was week 5. That was the research part, research manage users. And then week 6 was managing users, the actual lab doing it. And then week 6, you had the research paper of writing managing files. So there was a paper last week, Sunday was due yesterday, right? So there was a paper on managing files. Now this week you're actually going to do a lab, and create the lines of commands that would do the managing of files.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of have you do the research the week before, you write a paper on it, and then the next week you do the lab and you research the next one, right? That's kind of how it's supposed to work. Um, and then kind of at the end, though, we do, let's see here, research NTFS permissions and NTFS permissions. Yeah, storage lab is the only one that's kind of off kilter. There's no real research. I just have you do the storage lab. But yeah, so that works out okay though. So yeah. So this week it's just a lab. We don't have any research. Next week you'll have a research in a lab like you had last week, and then that last week you'll have a research in a lab that, and you'll research something that you won't actually implement. But if we had more time, we would. But it's with the 10-week class, it's just the project imaging to do an image is pretty intense, and so you need a little bit more time. In fact, I usually, in a 16-week class, I assign that assignment around week 4 or 5 and have it due like week 15 because it's so intense. But we just don't have the time. It moves too fast here in the summer, so we just have a research on it. But yeah, good question, right? And I do apologize. I did have a little mix up on when the labs and research was. But yeah, I try to have you do the research, do a paper, and then the next week do a lab on what you researched. So you were correct. You should have done a paper on files last week, and then this week you'll do the lab on files. So. All right, good question. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, I really don't have. I mean, this week is pretty simple, so I don't have much else to go over for this week. Next week, like I said, we'll go over the storage in a little bit in detail. That'll probably I want to do some of that on next Monday for the storage. But for the files, since you've already should have done the paper, it should go really good and fairly easy. But please reach out to me if you have any issues or questions. So I'm happy to help. But it should be pretty straightforward on the files. Well, if there's no other questions, then I will let you go for the evening. Let me go ahead and stop recording at least.